Welcome to Pinpoint TV. In this edition of the show, we will discuss the affinity between art and crisis. Is there a natural attraction between art and crisis? Does art need crisis to exist? The first problem we encounter is how to actually define crisis. What is crisis? Who is the subject of crisis? Crisis where and for whom? When we think of crisis, do we mean the crisis of late capitalism? Or does it entail the current political situation in Europe? In this moment of uncertainty and the emergence of right-wing politics, the migratory movement of the refugees, the xenophobia, Islamophobia, and other direct consequences of the latter. Does crisis refer to the same crisis of modern values, the crisis of the unfulfilled project of modernity, the crisis of enlightenment, humanism, and democracy? Is crisis a shared experience? Is it the same for everyone? Are we equal in the face of crisis? Or on the contrary, are there as many crises as individuals? And are all crises uncommensurable? For instance, we could ask ourselves the following question. Is crisis something particularly symptomatic of the present moment? After all, it seems difficult to find a period in our recent history which would not be defined as a time of crisis. As Walter Benjamin once wrote, "The state of emergency is not the exception but the rule." In other words, to consider crisis as an exception implies the privileged perspective of our thinking. Now, what about art and crisis? Or crisis and art? Is contemporary art in crisis? It seems that art doesn't play a major role in society anymore. It seems that art has been indeed replaced by emphasis on innovation, business entrepreneurship, startups, etc. and etc. Let's take a moment to look at the etymology of the word crisis. It dates to early 15th century, and it comes from the Latinized form of the Greek word krisis, which means a turning point in a disease, or literally, a judgment, a result of a trial, a selection. It comes from krinain, to separate, to decide, to judge. The root krai means to discriminate and to distinguish. In other words, to make a cut. For example, in history, the series of events that establish a before and an after. It is indeed interesting to see the affinity of the word crisis with criteria, critic, decision, and crime. What if a time of crisis is the time of making decisions, the time of the critics, the time of crimes? Is art a criminal or an outcome of a crime? Is art a critical force? And if so, what can it decide? Who takes responsibility for these crimes? Is it the artist? Let us speculate for a moment. We could claim that art in times of crisis makes more sense than ever, as what art definitely needs to flourish is the spirit of resistance. A cynical mind could easily believe that Donald Trump's election for the President of the United States is good news for artists. Finally, art can have a real opponent. And last but not least, what does it mean to ask ourselves these questions in a city like Berlin in 2017? Does art still make sense in Berlin? What type of resistance does the Berlin social and political context offer to artists? Is Berlin too benevolent a city for art? Too easy? Too self-indulgent? Today in the show we would like to ask, Why does art make sense today? Is art therapy in the times of crisis? Is it an ideological tool? Can it give hope? Can it have a relevant impact on the society? Is art a mirror or a hammer?
Good evening from Berlin.
Welcome to the second program of Pinpoint TV.
My name is Agata.
And I am Diego, and we will be hosting you this evening.
Both me and Diego will not pretend that we are experts in this topic. That is why we invited 4 guests. And together with them, we are going to discuss the topic of art and crisis, trying to bring some clarity to this topic, problematizing, shaking, and tearing it apart.
Let me introduce first Alex Head. His recent project is actually a book, which let me show it to you. The book is called Here Comes Trouble. Here Comes Trouble is an inquiry into art, magic and madness as deviant knowledge. It's an exploration of deviancy on several scales, including an analysis of the work of Silvia Federici into witch hunting and Michel Foucault into the treatment of the mentally disabled. Please let's welcome Alex Head.
Hi.
Hello, Alex. Just before I send you to the chair, are you interested, let me ask you this, are you interested in recontextualizing your work on deviancy in contemporary scientific, political, artistic discourse?
Yeah, thanks very much for the invitation. I think certainly the types of hatred which are coming out of Western European and American politics on the far right particularly have the characteristics of the persecution of the deviant, which I kind of outlined, which I discovered in my book, which is this kind of ambiguity, this dangerous ambiguity in the way in which the title of deviant is ascribed to people, and also they rely on this kind of binary us versus them. So I think the problem of the ascription of deviant behavior and the deviant subject is still very much part of the world that we live in today. Yeah.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you.
Our next guest. As the precarity of conditions for artists and cultural workers rapidly increases, Raumerweiterungshalle exists and acts in the solidarity as a sustainable space that aims to facilitate the development of alternative approaches to cultural, political exchange and community production. The organization team responsible for the maintenance of the infrastructure and coordination of events currently consists of 6 members, and one of the curatorial members is tonight with us. Please welcome Casey Detrow.
The next guest is Christoph Winkler, who is one of the most versatile choreographers in Germany. His work covers a wide range of formats and deals with topics both of a personal nature as well as highly political contributions to current social discourse. Let me also include to this description that in the early 90s he performed in the underground techno clubs. He studied choreography in the School for Drama Ernst Busch and funded Clank Creek Productions, a platform for experimental music. Let's welcome Christoph Winkler.
The next guest. Rima has lived in Beirut, New York, and now settled in Berlin. She speaks French in an Arabic accent, English in a French accent, and Arabic in a Lebanese accent. Even though Rima is a modern-day polyglot, for some reasons she has difficulty finding the words to describe herself as an artist. The first time Rima felt she was a remarkable, exceptional, amazing, astonishing, marvelous, wonderful, incredible, unbelievable, phenomenal, outstanding, unusual performer was when she stepped off the plane onto United States soil, where she was randomly selected for a security check. She knew she had to be attractive, considering this continued to be the case at JFK Airport. Regardless, the experience still encouraged, boosted, bumped, inflated her ego, and gave her the impression that she was destined to move people. Please welcome Rima Najdi.